Hey everyone, welcome to my talk, Composable DIY. My name is Justin Metros, I'm CTO at Tokless, and very happy to be here speaking with you today. So, I gave my talk a kind of a secondary name, which is how to do enterprise things on startup budgets, because to be honest, that's where my experience really lies. Like piecing large solutions, applications, websites together when you don't have the ability to build every single little piece yourself. And I think that's really what's at the core of composability. So, just a quick intro on myself. I've been making things on the internet for about 22 years, and the majority of that's been focused on e-commerce. Everything from really big enterprise to startups, and lately I'm working on building things with Web3 and that ecosystem, which has been quite fascinating, and also a lot of composability there as well. So, I'm here to share my experiences for the composability talk, really specifically around making technology decisions when building applications within constraints. Because at least in my experience, it's very rare where there's some kind of infinite budget and infinite team that comes together. And most of the projects, the vast majority of projects I've worked on, there's a set budget, a set deadline. The team is a certain size with certain skill sets, and part of the job there. I mean, besides making it happen, is making it happen within those guidelines, and that's what we're talking about with composability here. So, as I go into this, there's a few like topics I want to discuss and touch upon. Um, One is like evaluating tools and services and things that I look for going through that process. Another is when to build versus subscribe. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time there because there's a really exciting panel they'll be holding with that topic. And then also just a bit about taking risks, because when we're putting lots of pieces together, there is, I guess, with all things on the internet, right? There's some risk involved with that. So, why composability? There's a lot of talks today, a lot of different like answers for that. In my opinion, technologies change, things evolve, and you're free. I like it best when I'm free to replace pieces or services of my application when they're decoupled enough. And a lot of the time, I'm designing architecture around this composability, and also, I choose composability because building things, it's hard and it costs time and money, and again, those are resources that most of the time are finite. Um, and are like a major like driving factor into how we approach solving problems. So, composable DIY, our talk do it yourself. My kind of spin on that is, yeah, do it yourself, but don't necessarily invent it yourself. That is, unless, inventing it is your business model. Um, in this case, I'm not talking about if you work at you're creating a SaaS product and you are like making one thing that's to be licensed out. That's kind of like the part of the composability. I'm coming from a space where building sites and apps and shops and different solutions where there's a lot of technologies that all need to come and work together. So databases and emails and marketing and all kinds of integrations to make all the things flow together. Uh, you know, we have Aristotle, as true today as it was then. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I'm a huge believer in this. Um, you know, alone you can have, we talk about Lego bricks a lot in composability. And when you take that bucket of Legos and you spill out all over the floor, um, it's just like a mess. There's nothing like that cool about that. We take those and we carefully craft them together to, and really in a way that creates like a whole that was, previously indistinguishable from the scattered mess of pieces. And I like to think about that composability in a different way. We have these acronyms like jam for jamstack, mock architecture, and I like to think of the API part in that. I think that can, and maybe probably for me it's usually probably, but that A, like that's the replaceable part. If you have your JavaScript APIs and markup, for example, and you're composing different APIs together to create a solution. And if you have one of those APIs that's underperforming or is buggy or just doesn't have the features that you thought it did, you want to be able to hot swap that API within your stack. So I really like the idea that in the jam the A is kind of what we're swapping out here. Um, so uh, this is another like metaphor here that I really love this one. Colleague of mine, uh, Ishan, shared this with me, and it was just too good to not put into my talk here. Was I was talking about the A and in the Jamstack about how those APIs are hot swappable, but we're also thinking about how we're building things we're subscribing, and in that conversation I was having, it kind of dovetailed to the A team, and the funny like metaphor there is imagine on the 10th episode that the tank that they built in the 5th episode to save the day broke, and then they had to go back and fix it. And this is a it's a real like underlying current to what those APIs kind of represent in our stack. If we are building like every single piece of our app from scratch, um, we're then like you know accountable for all those pieces, and at a certain point it can like prohibit like forward movement by having to go back and maintain and fix things. And like the A Team, like fantastic show, for its time, I would say, at least. And that entire like premise and narrative breaks down if they like had to deal with the same things that we need to deal with, just in terms of like being responsible for things that we build. So yeah, A Team is a reference that I like quite a bit. And yeah, I pity the fool who needs to maintain this. All right. So like evaluating tools and services. So I'm coming from a place of composable DIY, and what I mean by that is you know working on a team and a budget that's modest. I think a lot of fantastic things get built out there with small teams, and or at least smaller teams, small-ish teams. I mean, it's one thing if you have 500 engineers on a project. I mean, that's awesome, but when you don't, you really need to be mindful about where you're directing your energy, where you're burning those calories. And a big part of that in the composability world of choosing, which software as a service is right for you, and which APIs, which open source products are going to be the best. How you evaluate it and how you approach evaluating can really help identify any issues that you might have and get ahead of like problems that you might run into later by just doing a little bit of homework up front. And I spend a lot of my time uh, evaluating tools, reading them, getting demos, even if I don't like necessarily have a need for them. If I get a newsletter and I see something really cool, and they're offering like demos, or they have like there's a webinar available, or a talk that they're giving. I'm always trying to sign up for that stuff so I can just be aware of what's out there. Like awareness, just in its own, is like a huge part. But um, but going into evaluating tools and services, um, I think like this seems really like easy and straightforward, but I found myself overlooking this a lot. Is clearly defining the problem that you're trying to solve. There's been so many times where I'm looking for a solution for this, and then I look at uh, solution A, and it's got these other things added onto it. Now my scope starts growing. Before I know it, I'm really evaluating things that are like way overkill than I needed for that problem I was trying to solve. So I really try to stay true to like what is the purpose of this tool that I'm selecting, that I'm composing into my stack. Really give it a definition about why you're selecting it. And then also, identify your competitive advantages. If you're developing an application or software that is doing something that is setting you apart from your competition, it may be likely that you're building that yourself. That's not something that you're incorporating. If you're building like a software product, for example, that could be your competitive advantage. Or maybe these are your brand or your industry secrets that you're having. You know, when you know what those things are, you can kind of compose around them, and you might want to keep those a little closer. When you do have those engineering resources that are dedicated towards building your own solutions, to keep them kind of focused on the things that are unique to you, and that allow your site, app, product to be competitive in that unique way. And I kind of touched on this, but just I mean, getting demos, downloading open source repos, reading through issues, and building feature first MVPs, minimal viable products. It's really, there's so many great uh, marketing landing pages for apps, and like awesome sales pitches, and then you get your hands on the tool, and maybe the API is really slow, or you find out that it doesn't actually do all the things that you need, or maybe it does do the things that you need, but they're at a higher price tier that's way above your budget for this solution. So by getting your hands on those tools and evaluating them, I know that by spending like an hour um, roughing something up before I make like a final decision, is I don't think I've ever regretted it. And it's been a lot of times where I was like dead set on having a solution, and go right in, build it right into the schedule, and a day later or 2 days later being like, this is just not working out, and something I could have found out by just doing a bit of like homework, and getting my hands dirty a little bit earlier there. And a couple other things that I like to consider is I always like to check out the big players in the space, but also um, check out the newcomers, check out the underdogs. They oftentimes have a ton to offer, and it could be that newcomer that in 6 months is the next big leader in that space. So I like to give, basically what I'm saying is like, keep an open mind and give them all um, anything that seems to meet your needs, give them all a fair chance. I've had a lot of like leading enterprise solutions really lack for me, where a smaller uh, more lightweight application or solution like ended up being a lot better. And so yeah, like keep an eye out for everything that's out there. And when you're looking at your software, also take a look at the company. How big are they? Do they have funding or not? What's their revenue model? And how is their support set up? Are you able to is it email only? Do they have a chat, a Discord, Slack? Do they have a service license agreement? These are all things that should be considered when you're looking at, this is, more for, software as a service where you're kind of signing up, subscribing for something. But yeah, it's really important. If you're paying for this like API and it stops working right at peak sale time for you, what are you going to do? What's your backup plan there? So, um, and of course, check the API docs and RTFM. I won't say that on the video, but if you can go ahead and Google that one. So this one, always comes to head eventually, which is being mindful of like costs, but also hidden costs. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking like mostly about time. Time is money. Anytime you build it yourself, you're basically creating opportunities for people to come knocking at your door, and they're going to come knocking at your door at the most inopportune time. So, when you are building things yourself, like be aware of like ask yourself, can I support this? Can I maintain this? It's a real big part of it. A lot of times, for a certain feature, it's easier to you know open or subscribe it out and rely on you know on them having like providing you with support to make it easier for you. So when to build versus subscribe, as I mentioned, I'm going to keep this kind of brief because there's a panel on it which I highly recommend you check out. But at the end of the day, you're probably not the first person to have this problem. Um, if you are, great, and you're building something beautiful and unique that the world will benefit from. But if you're doing lead capture or trying to send SMS messages, you're not the first person to have that problem. So um, just make sure that when you are subscribing or you're considering building something, that you're balancing not just the cost to build it and get it out the door, but the cost to maintain it. So if that's long-term cloud infrastructure or Lambda functions or whatever it needs for you, or time dealing with customer support, make sure that's factored in. Time is often overlooked there when it comes to budgets. And when we're talking about composability, and my experience is largely, like I mentioned, in e-commerce and building sites and applications more on kind of like the experience level. It's your job to build the experience a lot of the time, not the infrastructure. um, and there's a great quote from Jeff Raskin, as far as the customer is concerned, the interface is the product. So a lot of times the end user, they're not going to know what necessarily what they just use to auto subscribe their cleaning products to, or how they just got onto your mailing list, or um, the tracking tools that you're using for retargeting ads. Like the end user, they're gonna you're gonna be like wrapping this all together, and they're not going to be aware of that. It's really like how you piece them together to create that seamless experience, and that's an art in itself. I mean, going back to the Lego metaphor, um, being able to take that endless pile of different pieces and to make like that beautiful spaceship that's indistinguishable from the pile of rubble. There's an art to that. And when it comes to taking risks, in my opinion, composability, it diversifies your risk. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. If you have an API that's not working for you, and there's like a competitive space around that, you have the ability to, again, like the A and jam, to swap that out, and it reduces um, the weight on you and your team to be reliant on every single little piece when you have composing software and tools together that have that kind of support that you might get. And of course, another beautiful thing, which I've kind of been going through the whole time about why composability is so great, always have a backup plan. If this doesn't work, what are you going to use? What's your second choice? have that kind of ready to go. So just to summarize, honestly, try to do less. Use what's out there. The internet is mature. There's a lot of great stuff. If something's working out there and it could solve your problems, and you can kind of plug it in and make it seamless, that's great. Do less if you can. Um, if you do less, do it well. Less is more. And you know, to the true composability mantra of this conference, do it piece by piece. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. I really hope you got some value from that. And by the way, if you want more where that came from, we want to invite you to be a part of our community. Go to composability.dev and register today. If you've already registered, you know what I'm talking about. And by the way, if you're on Twitter at all, go to JavaScript Jam and follow us. Why? Because every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we go live. Yeah, live on Twitter Spaces. And you can join us and be with us there while we're live. Heck yeah. You know what? And it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or you've been doing this forever. We love everybody being involved. We bring so many people up to the stage. We have so many great conversations. We want you to be a part of it. All right. We'll see you there.